Hello, everyone, and Happy New Year's. Welcome to 2025. Hopefully, everybody had a great Christmas and a great holiday season. I know I was able to spend Christmas with my in-laws and the New Year's with my family up in the mountains, and we love it. And one of the questions I always like to ask at the dinner table there, and it's always fun to see the response, typically a few tears too, is, "Hey, what was your top moment of 2024? What was your best moment of 2024?" And I know this time of year we like to look forward, new year, new me, sure. But before we do that, I do want to take just a look back so that you can really appreciate all the good things that did happen to you last year. All the things that you either accomplished or the people that you met or the trips that you went on or the things that you bought, right? When we look back, we can really start to see the traction that we made and how far we have come. And that can really help us do a better job of planning our 2025 here. So, y'all, today, what I want to focus in on, I've got 5 steps for us to really map out a good 2025 when it comes to our finances. And I want to start there. And so, yeah, let's hop on in. All right. So, the question we're asking here today, right here in January of 2025, do you feel like you finished last year feeling financially fit or feeling financially fat? It's okay. No judgment zone here. Do you feel at this moment in time financially fit or financially fat? And by the way, that number is different for everybody. That looks different for everybody. Everybody's got an ideal weight. Everybody's got an ideal amount in their bank accounts and their investment accounts, right? And each person is going to be different. But we all feel a certain way. And before we get into, are you actually financially fat? Are you financially fit? Before we get into that, I just want to ask you this. How do you feel right now? Because that's what's going to motivate you to make changes. If you're feeling great, awesome. Let's continue to feel great. Let's continue to do great things that make us feel good, right? That's a pretty good thing, pretty good motto to live our life by. But if we feel financially fat, right? Let's take a look. Let's run the numbers here. How did we get fat? And how do we avoid getting fatter? And then also, how do we work on getting financially fit? So today we're going to focus in on taking a look back on last year, taking a look forward to this year. All right. And then what we're going to end up doing is setting some goals. I want to give you 5 steps that I've used in my past to help me hit those goals. Right. But before we do all of that, we have to come to a conclusion of what does success look like? What does being financially fit look like? What does being financially fat look like? For instance, financially fit, that might mean you don't have any credit card debts, that your emergency funds at 3 to 6 months of expenses here, that you're able to go buy stuff when you want to go buy, that you're able to sleep at night without financial stress, that you're excited about your tomorrows because you're putting your money into your investment accounts, into your retirement accounts. You know that your tomorrows are going to be better than your yesterdays. Maybe that's what financially fit feels like to you. And on the contrary, what does financially fat feel like? Maybe we have some lingering credit card debt that's out there. Maybe our bank accounts really took a hit and we are not at that 3 to 6 months of an emergency fund that we like to be at. Maybe we just don't feel good. Maybe we're a little bit stressed about a few things financially here. Maybe we can't go just buy whatever we want to buy right now. Maybe we've got to have some hesitancy here. So maybe that's what financially fat looks like for you. Once again, this is a different definition for every single person, but we have to define what financially fit feels like and looks like to you so that we can reverse engineer a game plan to help you get from where you are to where you want to be here in 2025 here. All right. So before we get to the 5 steps that we need to do to reach these goals, the first thing we got to do is we got to look backwards. Like I said, I love looking backwards. It shows how far we've come. And what I love about looking back on the year is that you could do 2 things that are very effective. Number one, you can open up your phone right now and you can start looking at all the pictures you took from January till the end of the year. And I highly recommend doing this. It's one of my favorite activities. You don't realize how much you did, how much you accomplished, um, you don't realize how much awesome time you spent with people until you go back and you look. You say, man, I remember that night. That was great. Hey, I remember that dinner. That was phenomenal. Hey, I remember that trip. Wow, what an amazing trip, right? And it's just such a blur by the end of the year that taking that time to look back through your photographs to find out and to reflect on everything that you've done and the people you've hung out with and everything that you've accomplished, that's super important in my opinion. Now, that's great for life. Let's take that to the financial side. What does that mean for you financially? And you might have guessed it, and I want to say it. You need to go back and you need to look at every single transaction from 2024. I mean, every single swipe of the credit card, every single bank account transaction. I want you to go back and I want you to look at every single dollar that you spent. Because if you think that looking at photos is a good reminder of everything you did, the numbers don't lie. Where you spend your money tends to reflect your values, right? And so when we go back and we look at all the transactions that we have, you'll remember in the back of your mind, you'll bring up, oh, that was that dinner there, or hey, that was that baseball game there, or whatever it was. But the tape doesn't lie, the numbers don't lie. When we go back and we look at every single transaction here over the last year, you're really going to be able to get a complete viewpoint of 2024 here. And I actually think that this is a necessity. If you're a business owner, you have to do this for taxes anyways. And you need to kind of run your personal finances as if you are a business owner of your personal finances. Hey, if we are not running a profit here, we need to figure out why. What happened to our revenue? What happened to our expenses? Maybe we go back and we look at our revenue and our revenue's down. Maybe commissions weren't as good. Maybe the bonus structure didn't play out the way that you had hoped it would. If you are a business owner, maybe just general business was down. Maybe our revenue went down this year, which dove into our profit. However, if I had to guess, revenue generally goes up. It's the expense part that may have gotten out of control. Hey, did we lose track of our expenses um, in a backyard budget? Like we had a backyard project, went way over budget. Oh my goodness. Wow, that stuff escalates quickly, right? Maybe for you, it's the grocery budget. Maybe for you, it is the eating out budget. Maybe it's the travel budget. Who knows? But we need to look back and say, okay, if our profit is shrinking or if we ran negative in the numbers this year, did our revenue go down or did our expenses go up? And then once we realize, okay, maybe it was the expenses, now we've got to dig deep and dive into which expenses was it that made our profit shrink there. All right. So that's what we've got to do, guys. We've got to go back and we've got to look at every single transaction. Now, there are a few things that will help us do that. One is apps like I think Rocket Mortgage has one. I know that we offer an application to all of our clients that help track all of the expenses into one place. Because you can go to your credit card and you can get the summary of where your money was spent this past year. That's great, but it doesn't include your bank account information as well. Now, what you can do is you can go to your bank and you can go to your credit cards and then you look at them together, sure. But in general, what we like to do, y'all, is have a software where all of your accounts are linked together and it will show you a summary of where everything went all in one package, right? That's what we really want to look at here as we're looking at 2024 because that's going to really help you realize, oh, we spent X amount on our house. We spent X amount on food. We spent X amount on travel. Maybe it was a big travel year. Maybe there was a lot of medical expenses. It's really going to help you understand where your money went. We got to understand if we're going to move forward and we're going to do better than we were last year, we need to understand the mistakes that we made and the pitfalls that we ran up against so that we could better prepare for them. Because I'm not saying that everything is actually your fault. As a matter of fact, let's go one example here that has affected every single person listening to this podcast. Inflation. Inflation is not your fault. You did not cause inflation. Maybe a little bit. Maybe you overspent a little bit that caused inflation. But it's generally not our fault. But it is our problem. And it is not going away here. Right. So when you look at last year and you realize that your car insurance doubled or your home insurance went up by 50%, or you realize that your grocery bills were up 30% of year over year, I just want to let you know in general, that's probably not your fault, but it is your problem and you have to address it. And if we don't look back and realize where our money went, we're not going to be able to recognize the challenges that are ahead of us, like inflation, and we're more importantly not going to be able to plan around it here. Okay. So that said, before we look forward to 2025, we got to look back to 2024. It's an absolute must, in my opinion. You got to go back. You got to look at all your transactions. You got to know where your money's going here. And now that we know where you spent your money, now all of a sudden we can come up with a game plan for 2025. All right. So, how do we get financially fit? I've got 5 steps here that we are going to go through. Some of these are very basic. Some of these might be a good reminder, and some of them we're going to really dive into. All right. The first one that we've got to discover here, and this goes right along with the 2024 look back here, is we have to master the basics. All right. So I'm going to use a football analogy here. Football games are won at the line of scrimmage. You might have the best wide receivers on the planet. You might have the best quarterback. At the end of the day, if the other defensive line is better than your offensive line, your running back's just not going to have a great day. Your quarterback's not going to have enough time to get it out to your wide receivers, right? The greatest example I can imagine in recent history is the Ohio State Michigan football game. Michigan had no business at 8-6 beating arguably the most talented team in the world, in the college football world right now. They should, it was 2-3 touchdown favorite was Ohio State, but Michigan still won, right? Why do they win? Because they dominated the line of scrimmage. And that is what we've got to focus in on when we're thinking about our finances. Sure, we can focus in on the flashy wide receiver, which might be, the cryptocurrency, the stock, you name it. Sure, we can focus in on the quarterback, which, might be a financial planner. But at the end of the day, everything, everything relies on winning at the line of scrimmage, the blocking and the tackling, the fundamentals of your finances. And at the end of the day, the fundamentals of your finances are managing the revenue and the expenses so that we can increase the margin between what you take home every single paycheck and what is going out. Because that margin, that difference between what you make and what you spend, that's where the magic happens. That's where financial planning happens. That's where dreams happen right there, right? And if we lose track of where the revenue, when and how it's coming in and how we can increase it, or if we lose control over our expenses and where it's going out, all of a sudden that margin starts shrinking and shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. And next thing you know, we may not be going negative, but we're not making any progress. And that's not a great place to be. Progress brings energy and excitement and enthusiasm for the future. We want to be making progress. And the only way we make progress is with a healthy margin. And the only way we have a healthy margin is by doing the blocking and the tackling, making sure that we're monitoring the after tax revenue that we're bringing in and making sure that we're controlling those expenses that are going out. That is the blocking and tackling finances. And guess what? You will never get beyond the blocking and the tackling of finances. There is no graduation of blocking and tackling. Once again, you have the best wide receivers ever. You have, whether that's best investment in the world, you name it. At the end of the day, no matter how wealthy you become, you will always have to keep control of how much money is coming in and how much money is going out. And you will never get past that, right? So if we are going to have to do blocking and tackling for the rest of our lives, then we might as well get really good at it right now. Once again, I want to highly emphasize utilizing technology to help you do this, finding a system that works for you, a system and a process where you can pull up all of your revenue, all of your expenses in one place. It's being tracked for you automatically so that you don't have to be handwriting it. By the way, handwriting your expenses is very effective, but it's not a very good long-term solution for most people, right? So let's find a good application, a good software where you can input your accounts, it can track your expenses for you, and you can really take a close eye here at the blocking and the tackling of your financial planning and setting up a meeting once a week, once a month, whatever it is, once a quarter, so you can go back and look and see where your money is going. All right, now that's step number one. We've got to master the basics here. We got to get back to blocking and tackling, particularly in today's inflationary environment. All right. Number two is we got to find some motivation here. All right. And the reason I'm doing this right now is that you have motivation, hopefully in January, that will probably be gone by the end of January, right? It may last into February if you're special, but in general, motivation is one of the most powerful things that we could have. It's just a very fleeting force. So we want to go ahead and harness this while we can. We've got to understand our motivation. All right. So if you are financially fat, right, maybe your motivation is very simple. Maybe you just want to pay off your credit card bills. Maybe you just want to build up your emergency fund so you have less stress at night. Maybe you just want to be able to go buy what you want to buy when you want to buy it. And right now you don't feel that way. Okay. So if you want to find your motivation, you're financially fat, it's very much like when you get on the scale after on Jan 1 after eating all the cookies from Christmas here, and you're like, oh my goodness, that's not where I want to be. Let's get motivated. Let's get on a diet. Let's not drink during January. Let's work out 4 or 5 times a year, 4 or 5 times a week here for the month of January to get back to where we want to be, right? Being financially fit and being actually healthy fit are not that different here, right? The difference is there is no scale for your finances except for maybe your credit cards and your bank account. You open that up, you look at it, you say, man, I don't feel good about where I am at right now. Let's work on getting financially fit here. So maybe your motivation is just to get out of debt. Maybe it's to save up a little bit more cash, but maybe you're already feeling financially fit. Now we've got to dig deeper into the motivation because, guys, the motivation of loss is so much more powerful than the motivation of gain. And when you have credit card debt, you're losing money to interest every single month. And there's a lot of motivation to pay that debt off because of that loss, right? But let's say you don't have that credit card debt and you've got enough money in your bank accounts. Now all of a sudden we need to set new goals. Maybe you want to go to Aruba. I don't know. Maybe you want to go buy a mountain house. Maybe you want to go buy a beach house. Maybe you want to go start your own business here, right? So what's important to know is that when we are motivated, to go accomplish something, then what we can do is use that motivation, which will be fleeting, to build the systems and processes necessary for us to automate our success into that. Okay. Now, I do want to point this out. If you're financially fit, your motivation will be much more fleeting than if you're financially fat. Okay. If you're financially fat and you've got credit card debt, that motivation is going to slap you in the face every single month, right? But how do we continue to grow and get ahead on this? Well, I think it's important to understand that whenever we go to buy something, whenever we go to allocate something, we are either going to go buy something or we're going to save that money. And by saving that money, we are buying freedom. Okay, let me repeat this. So there's a new sweater you want. You can take money and you can go buy that new sweater. Um, or you can save that money and you're buying freedom. And what I mean by that is you're buying freedom to go buy something else later on, right? You're buying freedom to go invest that money so it can grow so you can go buy something that you really want later on, right? So when it comes down to blocking and tackling and finding your why, we really want to get crystal clear on what our core values are. That way our money can follow those core values because maybe eating out just isn't it isn't tickling your fancy anymore, but you're still doing it for some reason. We do this every now and then. Most of the time, our money follows our values, but every now and then it doesn't, right? Well, we want to make certain that we know what our why is, that we know what our motivation is. So when we decide, hey, are we gonna purchase this thing, or are we gonna purchase freedom by not spending this money, but we've got a really good clarity of what is worth it, in our opinion. All right, so step one, we're going to tackle the basics here, blocking and tackling, really understanding our revenue and our expenses. Number two, finding that motivation. Why are we doing this? Declaring that, right? Why are we doing this? Is it to get out of debt? Is it to save up for our first home? We have to define that because we will forget it, right? Now that we have the motivation, we have to do step number three, which is we have to reverse engineer our goals here. We know where we are. We know where we want to be. What is the best way to get there? We're going to start with the end in mind and work backwards on this, right? So, for instance, if we want to save $24,000 a year, we know that we need to save $2,000 a month to do that. If we have $12,000 in credit card debt, we know that we need to pay $1,000 a month plus some interest in order to get rid of that credit card debt. If we know that a kitchen remodel is going to cost us $50,000 and we want to start by the end of the year, then we need to find a way to save $4,000 a month. Right? Once we understand why we're doing this and the motivation, we can now reverse engineer our goals to get us there. These are not long-term goals. These are not retirement goals. These are short-term. What do we want to accomplish in 2025? Great. What do we have to do financially in order to accomplish those goals? And that's where a good financial plan and that's where good goal setting starts. We have the end in mind, we have the motivation. Now we know what we've got to do to get there. Now, as step number 3, that should be the easiest one. Step number 4 is a little bit more challenging, though, because we really do need to anticipate the pitfalls here. This is not, life is not linear, and neither are your finances. If you want to save 24 grand and you think you're just going to easily save 2 grand a month every single month and just automatically get there, that is not going to happen because you are going to get hit every single way along the way here. You're going to have your HVAC going out. You're going to have a plumbing issue go out. You're going to have to replace your tires. And every single month, it's going to seem like there's something new that's keeping you from getting to that $2,000 and so of savings. And so we've got to really dig deep here and say, okay, what are the biggest challenges and the pitfalls of 2025, right? We already talked about inflation, okay? And to be clear, inflation is something that we cannot really control, but it is a problem that we've got to work around. Now that we've identified that problem, we can plan around it and therefore, mitigate the risk of that problem, right? Now, the truth is, when we're looking at, okay, what are the biggest pitfalls between you reaching your goals and not reaching your goals? Almost indefinitely, it's going to be human behavior, i.e., it's you, it's me, right? I'm the problem, it's me, right? It's human behavior. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many of these podcasts you listen to, it doesn't matter how much you know about personal finances. Um, all that matters, intelligence doesn't matter when it comes to hitting your financial goals. It really doesn't. Human behavior does. Action does. Not what you know, what you act on, right? So human behavior is going to be the biggest indicator of whether or not you hit your financial goals this year. And so you've got to anticipate your biggest hurdles, which are going to be you. Now, to be clear, HVACs are really expensive right now. And if you got to replace an HVAC, and you wanted to save $24,000 and 14,000 of it went to a new HVAC unit, that's a challenge. And maybe you didn't foresee that coming. Maybe that hits you out of nowhere, right? So I think it's okay for us to know that, but we got to understand that, hey, maybe it's not a $14,000 HVAC, but maybe it is a car part that we have to get replaced. Things are going to happen. If you think that in a perfect world, if you think 2025 is going to be perfect, then you're sorely mistaken here, right? There's going to be so many challenges that we had no clue even existed, right? That are going to come at us, which is why we've got to control what we can control and do good when the times are good here, right? So let's anticipate some of these pitfalls, right? Um, well, let's say this. Once again, we know that inflation is going to happen. It's here. It's prices are not going to go down. When inflation lowers, guys, it just means prices are rising at a slower rate. It does not mean that prices will go down here. So, what are the pitfalls, right? Well, let's say that you're a big foodie and you love going out to eat, right? Particularly on a Friday night. All right. What if we were to do this? What if we were to say, hey, you know what? Instead of going out on Friday night and spending $100 per person, let's try to recreate a meal every single Friday. Let's try to recreate one of our favorite meals. Okay. And instead of spending $100 per person or $50 per person, let's spend $50 total. All right. So for easy math, let's say that you going out with your friend, with your spouse, with your significant other, let's say it's $50 per person. I don't think that's that far off right now. All right. But you can cook at home for $50 total. Okay. And we can go and we can try to recreate our favorite deal, our favorite dish. And so that's what my wife and I have actually done for years. We have steaks with the Franks. We actually have friends over for steaks on Friday nights. And I'm not going to lie, we've gotten really good at it. My wife cooks the sides, I cook the steak. I'm not going to say it's restaurant quality. I've definitely been to Little Alley Steakhouse and gotten a bone-in ribeye that was to die for. I think it would be probably hard for me to replicate. That being said, my fillets, y'all, mm, My reverse seared fillets on a big green egg. Woo, it's restaurant quality. It's great. And so what we've done is we've gone and we have tried our best to save money in that one area because we noticed that we were spending a lot of money there. And frankly, we were just exhausted on Fridays, anyways, right? So maybe it's, hey, you love going to the movies. All right, maybe we watch one movie in the house, but we get a popcorn machine instead, right? So we got a popcorn machine here. We make an event out of it. We go out, we get a 2 liter bottle of Coca-Cola to go along with it. We buy some we buy some Smarties or whatever candy you buy at the movie theater. And instead of going and spending $50 at the movie theater after tickets and popcorn and everything like that, we spent, $20, right? So we've got to understand what the pitfalls are, where your money went last year, which is why going over last year's expenses is so important. Because when we can anticipate the pitfalls and the roadblocks, which are going to be mostly us, right? Then all of a sudden we can start to game plan around this. All right. Now, let's go back through these steps here before we get to step number 5. All right. Step number 1 is focus in on the fundamentals, the blocking and the tackling, the revenue generation, and the expenses. All right. Number 2 is we got to harness our motivation. When we get motivation, we've got to harness it. Because motivation, I don't know about y'all, but man, it's what's that old saying, like, my got up and go done got up and win, or something like that, right? So when we're looking at motivation, when you think about, all right, how often are we actually motivated? It is not that often. We've got to harness it and we've got to take that motivation. We got to create a game plan. And what is that game plan? All right, we have this motivation. We know what we want. Now we can reverse engineer, which is step 3, reverse engineer that game plan here. While we're creating that game plan, we've got to know that not everything is going to go to plan. What are the pitfalls going to be? All right, now that we've got that done, now we get to step 5. And this is by far the hardest one and the most important one and the most time consuming one up front. And you need to do it. And step number 5 is we want to automate everything. Automate, automate, automate. Do not leave stuff up to chance. Do not leave stuff up to habit. Do not leave stuff up to discipline, because over time, discipline degrades. Over time, it degrades. And realistically, particularly when you are tired, right? When we are tired and we are fatigued, discipline disintegrates. And that's why we have to automate everything that we can. All right, what does that look like? All right, let's say that your goal is to save up $24,000 this year in cash. All right, well, we have 2 ways. You can either move that money every single month from your checking to your savings, okay, when you feel like it, or we can put an automatic transaction in there so that on the 16th of every single month, $2,000 is going to move from your checking account to your savings account. And that way you either have to automatically or you have to manually go in there and stop it, or you have to manually go back and move the money back into your checking account. But we are automatically saving $2,000 a month to our savings account unless you manually go in and stop it. Okay. So which one's going to be better? Which one's going to have better results? You manually moving the money over every single month? Come on, give me a break. That's not going to happen. You might get 3 out of 12 months, maybe 4 out of 12 months if you're really disciplined there. But automatically moving that money and then having to manually stop it, man, that's powerful right there. Same exact thing with paying off credit card debt, right? We're gonna automatically we have $12,000 credit card debt. We're gonna automatically put $1,000 a month towards there, and it's gonna automatically come out of our checking account unless you go in there and you change the amount, right? So we're going to automate this stuff to get the human behavior element out of here so that we can make better and more consistent progress on this. Now, that works as well on savings and investing for the future. Automatically investing every single month without you having to go in there and manually move money. It's going to automatically pull. That's what happens in your 401k. Your money automatically goes in every single month, right? Now, let's say that we want to go and we want to go buy a second home in the mountains, or we want to go buy a first home. Great. Set up a separate checking account, a separate savings account. Have the money go from your checking account to that savings account automatically every single month. That way, we are going to make a lot of progress here towards that. All right. So going back through the 5 steps here to reach your goals in 2025, and I want to go at the very back. You have to go look at 2024. If you don't go look at 2024, you are shooting in the dark. That's the biggest takeaway from today. The 5 steps, come on, I'm certain that people have a lot better steps than I do, right? But if you were to take nothing away from this podcast, go back, look at every single transaction at 2020 of 2024. I'm going to repeat that. Go back, look at every single transaction of 2024, figure out where your money went, all right? And now that we know where your money has gone, we can now make a better game plan here for 2025. That's the biggest thing I want you to take away. Once you've done that, now all of a sudden, find a technology that helps you master the basics of revenue and expenses, particularly expense management. Have it track your expenses on a monthly basis. Go and look at it on either a weekly or monthly, at max a quarterly basis here, so you know if you're staying on track or not. And understand that you will never get to a point where you can lose track of how much money's coming in and how much is going out. Therefore, if we have to deal with the basics for the rest of our lives, damn it, let's get good at the basics, right? Now, it's January, step number 2. Let's get some motivation in here. What do we really want this year? What do we really crave this year? Is it financial security? Is it paying off credit card debt? Is it getting into a bigger home? What is it we really want here? Let's harness that motivation right now, because it will be fleeting here. And now that we have that motivation and that drive, let's go ahead and reverse engineer that financial plan, and reverse engineer that goal, so that you know what you need to do on a monthly basis to reach there. Let's anticipate step number 4, the pitfalls. Let's create systems and processes that help us defend ourselves from ourselves here. And then step 5, let's automate everything that we can. Let's not leave this up to chance, to discipline, to motivation. Those things will crumble here. Let's build systems and process that automatically ensure your success here. And then if you do need to change those later on, you certainly can, right? So, hey, I think that this is a good game plan for becoming financially fit in 2025. A lot of us are feeling financially fat right now. A lot of that is our fault. Some of it's not our fault. Let's focus in. Let's at least acknowledge what's not our fault so we can game plan around it. But let's really do a deep dive in acknowledging what is our fault so that we can control that going forward here. Hey, best of luck to you in 2025. We are here to help. The last thing I would say, the final thought I would say, is that a lot of people are sitting there listening to this wondering, how do I do this in 2025? What are the systems and the processes that I set up? How do I overcome my own human nature, right? Hey, if you're asking that, I want to get you out of this. I want to get you out of this thought. So quit asking how to do stuff and start asking, who can help me do this? Quit asking how to do stuff and start asking, who can help me do this? Here's the best of the 2025.